Ending never-ending wars. That was a promise that President Trump made in 2016 and again in 2024. That's a great cause. But you are not going to end wars with ideological regimes and ideologies that are fundamentally based on fighting you to death. Okay? We are dealing with transnational Islamic terrorists that occupy Iran. In 1970s, Iran was considered to be just another Western country. Americans and Europeans traveled to Iran as a favored destination because it was a great civilization with very peaceful and friendly and welcoming population. Unfortunately, the influence of Marxism and religious fundamentalism created this revolutionary ideology that hijacked the country in 1979. But lots of great things happened since. First of all, the Iranian people realized that Marxism, Islamism, all of those ideological belief systems are regressive. It reversed every progress that Iranians had since the beginning of the 20th century, when they had the first democratic revolution in the Middle East, one of the first democratic revolutions in the world. In 1905, Iranians had the first constitutional revolution. That was heavily influenced by what Americans achieved in the country. When Reza Shah, the founder of Pahlavi dynasty, was trying to establish a modern country, at first he was trying to do what Ataturk in Turkey did, a republican. But then the society and the elites begged him to become the monarch and continue with a constitutional monarchy, which is democratic and, according to the culture, suited the country the best at the moment. Because the people couldn't, at the time, couldn't understand any better way. So some sort of centralization of power was needed. Now today, Iranian people are some of the most educated people in the world. It's a country that produces as many engineers as countries like Japan and Germany. In every Western country, Iranians are amongst the most educated and most productive members of society. The same goes to Iran. Iranians are very industrious. Part of the reason this regime has been able to survive is the fact that Iranians are very self-sufficient and capable. But it's a backward ideology, very similar to communism, and can only survive by enslaving people. So people who are not free, they are not going to prosper and progress the way that people who are free, or at least under a patriotic government, can. So, when you compare, for example, Iran to Saudi Arabia, yes, Saudi Arabia may have much more religious society, much more fundamentalist society, or whatever you want to call. I'm not talking about the majority or minority. I'm talking about comparing average individual to average individual. If you ask an average Iranian about their views of religion or uh, religious identity, they will tell you, "Oh, don't ask me about religion. I don't want to hear anything about it." And by my estimates and most of Iranians' estimates, most Iranians no longer identify as Muslim. So this takes us to one of the biggest myths about Iran, about the idea of regime change and idea of intervention. So these are all individual myths. First of all, when you talk about regime change, it does not necessarily mean that you have to deploy troops, does not mean you have to rebuild the country. None of that. Nobody has to repeat what George W. Bush did in Iraq and Afghanistan. It was a mistake. I'm not going to go there. I can write volumes of books about what they did wrong and how it could have been done in a way that it would have served America's interests for a fraction of the cost. But in case of Iran, one of the myths is, we don't want to start a war with them. But you don't have to start a war with them. You are already at war with them. Okay? In 1979, they invaded the US soil and took Americans prisoners, hostages. So if you don't understand what level of sovereignty a country's embassy has, go read the UN Charter and everything else. Okay? Your embassy in any country is part of your soil, part of your territory. And there are laws and protections for citizens of any country within that compound, right? You cannot just go to some other country's embassy without their authorization, let alone taking them hostage. So that was the declaration of war. That could have been an opportunity if you had the competent leadership in Washington. That would be an opportunity. Okay, these savages, a bunch of terrorists, took over the country. Is a country that has so much of American weapons, that generates so much wealth from oil revenue, is in a strategic location, has a large population, very capable population. You don't want that country that was one of your best friends and allies the day before to become your enemy. So that would have been in America's self-interest and Iranian people's self-interest to take action, take advantage of the situation, just eliminate them. There were like 10,000 radicals you had to eliminate and done, right? So Americans didn't do that. As a result of that, we had 9/11. Why? Because for the first time in history, all those backward people, fundamentalist people that are backwards, when you are, you have to spend your whole day going to these, learning all these ancient Arabic texts, about how to use a bathroom and all those how to treat the infidels, and all of those things, you're not going to be able to learn anything meaningful or beneficial or productive. So those backward people that wanted to find, they were fetishing the early Islamic period, that they were just radicals taking over all these Western countries and taking all sex slaves and everything else. Suddenly they saw, oh, that's a good model right there. We can go become a revolutionary movement or terrorist organization, whatever. And because we have this thing called jihad and we die for it, nobody could defeat us technically, because we could just, they are not dealing with the organized military. They deal with a movement, ideological movement. They cannot defeat, with weapons alone. You have to defeat the ideology. And how you defeat that? This is what I've been telling Americans forever. You need to prove them that that way is dead end, that they are going to be the losers. So by not trying to get rid of such a regime in Iran, you showed Al Qaeda, Taliban, everyone else that nope, you can take over a country and you can wage jihad in other countries, take over the rest of the Middle East, and once you have all that oil-rich countries and so much wealth, you can just buy the most sophisticated weapons and destroy the West, and now you could just turn the whole world into your slaves. That's how ISIS came. That's how Al Qaeda came. That's how all those regimes, all those movements started with a bunch of radicals and a bunch of illiterate children. They brainwashed until they became adults and became the foot soldiers. And there is a geopolitical aspect of it. So China and Russia see that. That's great. If you read Unrestricted Warfare, written by Chinese general in 1999, they specifically talk about how the Taliban, how bin Laden was such an effective potential proxy against the West, that just a small group that cost tens of millions of dollars, not billions of dollars, could cause trillions of dollars damage to the West by, denying access to Americans in many parts of the world, destabilizing the oil markets, requiring so much military expenditure and new military bases and more ships and aircraft carriers and intelligence resources. All that costs money. And the psychological aspects of it, really, if you measure that, you're talking about trillions a year being lost through indirect cost of radical Islamists. So since they took over the U.S. Embassy in 1979, they've been at war with the United States on a daily basis. Every morning when these Ayatollahs wake up, the first thing that they have to figure out is how they're going to fight the United States for the day, right? So even to them, even Iranian people listening to music for fun, is a cultural invasion by the West. Okay? You don't have to fight them in order to be at war with them. They are at war with you. So you cannot reverse that. There is no way you could reverse. The only thing you could do is to eliminate them. You could just eliminate them, take the power away from them, and guess what? There's a strong horse, weak horse situation. When those radicals see these backward scums no longer control one of the wealthiest countries in the world in terms of natural wealth, also in terms of human capital, 90 million people. That's a big population. Compare that to Scandinavia. Each country has 5 million people. In natural resources, they even have less. Landmass, massive. Strategic location, so much beautiful coastline. Do you know that the Persian Gulf coastlines of Iran, compared to the Iranian side, which is all like sand dunes, could become, for example, like $100 billion just tourism industry by itself? It just, potentials are enormous. And you have a bunch of backward radicals wearing these ancient Arabian robes, trying to bring their Messiah from hiding to give them the world after creating world chaos. This is what they believe. They believe they have to bring world chaos. Now, I cannot tell you that what they specifically think of nuclear weapons, because I haven't been inside every one of them heads, and it's not like something they would talk about every day, but they discussed it. I know they discussed that they're gonna need nuclear weapons to basically destroy the Western civilization. They believe in that. And just like the communists, they know Western civilization is just the United States. Europeans can't even protect themselves. Once you eliminate the United States, there's no one else on your path to take over Europe. You don't have to take over. The Europeans would just say, they're already with them. It's just I've been following this for my entire adult life, and it's amazing how complicit the Europeans are in what many of the evil things that Islamic Republic has been doing, including assassination of Iranian dissidents, that we've seen evidence that German and other European intelligence kind of coordinated with them to kind of give them a pass to assassinate and get out of the country, because it wasn't their problem, right? When it was JCPOA, the European lobby played a big role. When it comes to technology they use to, for example, all the industrial control systems that they are using for nuclear weapons, for weapons productions, and everything else. Most of them come from Germany. Siemens, for example, even where they print their fake money is made by the Germans. So those regimes cannot survive without Western support, and we cannot isolate them. If we let the Europeans, for example, do whatever they want, the Indians, you're gonna need oil, okay, you can go buy the oil, because that money is the money that keeps the Hezbollah, kept the Hezbollah, Hamas armed to be able to start these wars. Okay, that money. So sanctions are so important. Yes, you may not be able to get rid of the regimes or change them by sanctions, but at least you could take the money away from them. So the maximum pressure Trump administration actually prevented what happened during the Biden administration, right? Because they stopped the reverse that maximum pressure. So to make this short, we can simply have regime change in Iran by remotely supporting the Iranian people. And it may involve some elements of special forces or, security assistance. What I have formulated since 2009 is basically helping Iranians to create their own kind of transitional security, a professional, let's say, police and military force that can secure the country. And you don't have to train people from scratch. There are many elements of the country's military and law enforcement that are professionals. They just have that. That's the job. I, as an Iranian, I would never work for that regime. But there are people that had to feed their family. They had no choice. I don't live there. They do. So they had to work with the government, right? So, but many of them would easily break away from the regime. So you want to create the right psychological atmosphere. Every revolution or every war, you cannot win a war or you cannot win a revolution without winning the psychological battle. The psychological battle is you, number one, you have to be fully committed to your own principles and values. If you are not committed to your own principles and values, you're not going to see victory. When you go to, let's say, Afghanistan, and then you just let them treat a woman like that, let them have Islamic republics in those countries that are based on, so you just create the condition for discriminating people who are not that kind of, let's say Muslim. Well, what this country should have done in Iraq and Afghanistan, first and foremost, you tell them, look, our system is based on equality of everyone, and separation of religion from government, from a state, from laws, is very fundamental to having this, equal society where everybody is treated equally by the government. But once you have Islamic republics, so anyone who is not religious or anyone who is not Muslim suddenly is naturally discriminated because the government is a Islamic republic, not just a republic. Because republic means the people. Islamic republic means the republic of the Islamics, not everyone else. So that's what Iranians don't want. They don't want a religious government anymore. They never wanted. Even in 1979, if Ayatollah Khomeini told them that he wanted to create a Islamic republic based on Sharia law, and they understood what that actually meant, Iranians wouldn't have supported him. But those Marxists rebranded Ayatollah as some sort of liberator from imperialism. So there was all this Marxist influence that they exploited and made Iranians to trust and put trust in. And I'm not saying that, there's no way we could tell what percentage of Iranians actually wanted that revolution to succeed. But the youth, unfortunately, were Marxist indoctrinated at the time. Not today. The beautiful thing that happened after the revolution, Iranians saw, okay, those were the Marxists and those were Islamists. This is what they gave us. So Iranians today, they don't want to have anything to do with the ideologies. Just want to have a normal, democratic country that is forward thinking. They don't want to have a religious government. They want to have religious freedoms, not religious oppression. They want to have individual liberties, individual rights. Technically, Iranians are probably the most westernized or Americanized people in the Middle East. So it's insanity to think that not helping people who are as like-minded as it gets for the Middle East is a better choice than it doesn't make sense that it doesn't make any rational sense to think that not helping such people is a rational choice. Because if you are Islamist, if you are a communist, if you are a new Nazi or whatever you are, it's in your best interest to help the people that share your values to gain power. It's just rational self-interest. And also, if you want to end never-ending wars in the Middle East, which is a rational self-interest, the quickest way you could achieve that is to get rid of that regime that is sponsoring every terrorist organization that Americans have been at war with. So here are the choices. You want to end the never-ending wars? Help the Iranian people. If you want to drag this forever and keep going back and forth and keep getting Americans blown up and kidnapped and, smuggling weapons to American cities to blow up American cities in the future, maybe in the future, one way or another, let me tell you, do you think by eliminating their nuclear programs, they're not going to be able to get nuclear weapons? You think that you cannot go to North Korea with $1 billion, just buy a nuclear warhead, put in a suitcase, 10 nuclear warheads in 10 suitcases, and smuggle them to some American European cities, just blow up tens of millions of people? They can't do that. So you want to eliminate the regime that could afford to spend $1 billion from the oil revenue they steal from the Iranian people to even exist. Because if they exist, if they want to achieve that, with that kind of money they get in from China and Russia to buy their oil, and the Europeans and everybody else too, they are going to achieve that. And they don't have to put their fingerprints on it. They would go hire some cartel to plant those nuclear weapons, and they could remotely detonate them. When you have money, you could do so many things. You want to eliminate those countries, those regimes that have that kind of capabilities. And you do not have to wage wars. If you do not do that, if you do not help the Iranian people, you are going to have much bigger wars, potentially World War III. Because China and Russia know that if China wants to start another front in Taiwan, the war in Ukraine must continue. So America and Europeans all preoccupied there also. And they would need these Islamists to also start another front. So this way you are so overwhelmed and preoccupied, and you have your cities blown up with these suicide bombers and stuff, that you cannot protect Taiwan. And if they take Taiwan, we are going to become the Chinese slaves if they manage to take control of the AI. Because AI is very dangerous in the wrong hands. Let me give you one example. Artificial intelligence could study, with the right data and with the right processing power, artificial intelligence could study human behavior throughout human history. Every single book on psychology, every single movie, anything that's out there that no single human being can physically be capable of processing so much information, and figure out how the best ways to influence and take control of a society. They can get us into civil war. They can cause social collapse by simply playing with algorithms. Artificial intelligence is very dangerous. Whoever controls it is going to control the future. And if they take Taiwan, and we cannot destroy or deny the Chinese access to that technology, and we lose that technology, it's over. China and the tyrants of the world are going to rule the century. You will be the subject. And that's what they want. That's what the communists want. That's what all the tyrants of the world want. They don't want a free country to exist, because as long as one America exists, and only America, Europe, forget it. Europeans, you know what happened in World War II. Only the British, stood there and fought. Everyone else was either too weak to survive or surrendered. This country has always been, at least since the mid 20th century, the last refuge for freedom. Okay? If this country is gone, if we lose our freedoms here, freedom will be lost forever or for centuries to come. And the way to win this Cold War is to help like-minded people around the world become free and become our natural allies. See, we are not going to war with Europe. Europeans aren't going to war with each other. Why? Because they are natural allies. Even if they are not allies, they are naturally free countries. As Europe is shifting toward that Orwellian information state, or security state modeled by China, by CCP, this country is going to be on its own if we don't act. And let me tell you, once Iran flips, America is going to own Europe with the help of Iran. Because Iran is a country that has as much natural gas, if not more, as Russia, and a land bridge with Europe through Turkey, or alternatively through Azerbaijan, Armenia, Georgia. That means America, with the technology and capital and capabilities we have, once Iran is free, is going to be a partner of Iran to satisfy European energy demand. It's very serious. And if you are also concerned about mineral resources dependence to China, guess what? Iran is the gateway to Central Asia. Iran itself has rare earth elements, uranium, lots of stuff. I mean, uranium doesn't have a lot, but lots of copper, so much of undiscovered resources, and so much untapped resources, let alone oil and gas that's just massive. So that's another important thing, And Iran also has the a very good chemical and mineral processing industry that could be a great partner of the United States to become independent from China. Also, a great hub for future, let's say, if you want to do data center. Guess what? Iran has, forget about nuclear energy. They don't need it. Natural gas, plenty. And guess what? What else? Geothermal. The whole southern region could become geothermal power plants, geothermal desalination, major food producer once you have water, all those deserts to irrigate. It's going to become a very important and wealthy country. And probably the best friend of US and Israel in the Middle East. Don't miss that opportunity, even though change is going to happen. The only thing is, with America's help, it's going to happen much faster, and less people are going to die and suffer. You want to help the Iranian people, or you want to stick your head under the sand and think wars are going to just go away by not doing anything? And once again, nobody's talking about putting boots on the ground. I can just recruit. I already know so many former special forces, former intel people, I can just put together a team of people to recruit and train Iranian refugees and basically neutralize the military bases inside Iran that we can, in order to create a kind of grassroots security to dismantle the old regime and secure the country during the transition while the country is, developing a system of democratic governance. So this opportunity should not be lost, or we are going to have much worse wars in the future, potentially involving nuclear weapons and who knows what else.